Welcome. I'm Rob Moyer from the Ocean River Institute, and with me is Meriam Alessandroni. Hi, Meriam.
Hi, Rob.
And today we're taking hats off for right whales, and we're calling for a right whale national marine sanctuary. And there are lots of reasons for this. The biggest one is that the whales are in great trouble, and so we're going to break out the problems into 4 sections. And first up, Meriam is going to tell us about, what are you going to tell us about? Strikes, right?
Yes.
Yes, okay, take it away.
All right, so whale strikes are currently the largest cause of right whale mortality, and they are an endangered species experiencing an unusual mortality event, and this started in 2017, so this is a great concern to us right now. Habitat fragmentation has led to sustained whale ship strike mortality for the whales, and overall, injuries and death from collision have contributed to slow population regrowth. So this is a very dire concern. So as for some difficulties surrounding strikes, hits often go undetected or unreported due to the strikes occurring in remote areas, and then also struck whales often drift from the location of the hit. It can be difficult to attribute whether strikes occurred before or after death, so this affects the accurate count we have of deaths by strike. And overall information from striking vessels is limited. So as for the vessels themselves, a variety of vessels are striking right whales. Navy ships are in the lead, but this doesn't necessarily mean that they are actually hitting the most whales. They just have a standardized operation to report when they hit a whale, so they're more likely to report. Otherwise, for other types of ships, captains often do not report strikes as they're not under obligation. Large vessels are restricted to traveling in channels where they cross paths with whales, and smaller vessels are more likely to notice whales and avoid collision, so larger vessels are more of an issue. So for some causes of collisions, the 2 main would be speed and traffic. The most lethal hits are caused by ships 80 meters or longer and traveling 13 knots or faster. Larger ships tend to have visibility issues and less maneuverability, so even if they were to see a whale coming on, they might not have enough time to get out of the path. Right whales are low on the surface and thus harder to be seen. And whales killed by ships tend to be closer to major shipping lanes, so there's a lot of traffic going on between them. Whales often cannot detect vessel sound, and even if they are alarmed, their response is to swim to the surface, which increases the likelihood of collision. More than half of right whales swimming into the path of an oncoming ship are struck when the ship is traveling 13 knots or more. Whale strike risk can be reduced by 40% if ships slow to 10 knots. So here I have a map showing the migratory path of a 1-year-old right whale, and that is this red dot traveling up here. And as you can see, there's just a constant path of risk for this little baby. These are all pretty much larger ships, and there's just a lot of traffic going on, and this is making the route difficult for the poor little whale.
Let's run it again. So hold on there. So now he's up in Rhode Island, and now he's back
Come
down
down
in
here.
Atlantic City. So follow the red dot. There he goes off New Jersey. Man, it is tough being a whale. All those
It's
boats
tough.
out there. And
It's
those are
tough.
just the big boats that have the transponders.
Not only do you have to go all the way up there, but you got all this stuff in your path. So as for injuries and fatalities, of 292 reports of strikes, 68% were fatal. Injuries on the dorsal side means that they were alive when hit. Dead whales tend to float belly up, so both of these can be used to help determine an accurate count of deaths by ship strikes. Some collisions inflict internal injuries, so strikes can go unrecognized. Carcass decomposition can mask what killed the whale and goes unreported as a ship strike, or as a strike death. So again, this affects the total number we have. Calves are more vulnerable for spending more time at the surface, and they're harder to be seen as they're smaller. And shallow coastal areas prevent whales from avoiding vessels because they have nowhere to dive if they're in a shallow area.
Bummer.
So now I have some images of some different injuries here. The first indication of a strike injury is a propeller injury. So the top two images are just that. The one on the left is a humpback whale with a propeller slash right above his arm there. And that's a pretty deep gash we can see, so he might have some trouble swimming from that. And then on the right, we have a right whale with propeller slashes, and these are pretty big gashes, so they're very detrimental to the whale.
And that's a very dead whale, unfortunately.
Yes. And then the other type of strike is in the form of blunt trauma. So this is bruises, fractures, shattered skulls. Sometimes their jaws can be fractured, and then this affects whether they can eat or not. So if they can't eat, obviously they'll starve. So this is also a very big issue. So what can we do? Here are some mitigation strategies to save whales. So the number one would be marine protected areas, but unfortunately, as we saw before, whales and vessels are always crossing paths. So this is a bit of an unrealistic solution. So for some more realistic solutions, it would be seasonal management areas with onboard detection systems on the vessels, rerouting vessels from areas where there's high concentrations of whales altogether, and speed restrictions to 10 knots in the presence of whales. So strikes rise rapidly between 50% and 80% when traveling at 15 knots and exceed 90% when traveling above 20 knots. So here I have an example of a seasonal management area off the coast of the Cape. And this is an area where ships must slow to 10 knots. And this is actually smaller than it is currently. It is expanding, I believe, closer to Boston. Mm-hmm. So it's getting bigger, which is great. And right whale vessel strike mortality decreased during 2001 to 2006 and 2007 to 2012 from both voluntary and mandatory routing changes and increased management areas. So these solutions do make a difference, so we do need to be doing a better job of getting these implemented and making the areas bigger.
Yeah, they kept making it bigger, and then they'd find that whales were being seen where they hadn't put them before, and so they had to make it bigger again up along the coast of Massachusetts.
Yep, so it's good to have these be adaptable. And then here's just another map of some more seasonal management areas south of the Cape, starting down in Savanah. This is where the whales are during the winter season, and this is kind of up their migratory route. And the seasonal management areas are put, as you can see, in areas where there are major ports, so where there's more ships. And yeah. So to save right whales, slow down to 10 knots in their presence.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you, Rob.
Let's see, let's get back to you. And then we'll go to me, or then we'll go to... There we go. Thank you. So it's really important that the boats slow down when the whales are there. So there's all kinds of... It's not year-round you have to go this speed, but in the presence of whales.
Yes. So it's not always, but
right.
They don't always have to slow down. It's just
and it's not like fishing season where you can't go during this time, but it's because they're seeing the whales in the waters, then you have to go slow.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So it's a good compromise.
Yeah, they're not trying to over-limit people when they're speeding when other times.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackson Dempsey's here to talk about another big problem.
That's right. Hello, folks. I'm Jackson Dempsey. I'll be telling you about the second leading cause of whale deaths that are a direct result of human activity. And that activity is entanglements with fishing wire. So let's just start with a story that came through the news in the Boston Globe this week, where a 2-year-old female whale was seen by boaters in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. The boaters immediately called the Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans and attached a buoy to the rope that was entangling the whale. The whale was swimming through the water with a rope in its mouth and trailing behind it. So researchers attached a buoy so they could come back to the whale and locate it later so that it could be freed. The disentanglement efforts for this whale are currently underway. What's also notable is that this whale was one of 7 calves to the 35-year-old whale mother known as War. This family of whales has actually been subject to a combined total of 8 entanglements and 1 vessel strike with a ship. Just to give you an idea of how prevalent the entanglement problem is for whales, we can also look at the overarching statistics. According to one study, over a 30-year period, 85% of North Atlantic right whales were entangled at least once. 59% were entangled 2 or more times, with the number of whales not having experienced a single entanglement event being under 10%. So this is a serious problem we are dealing with right now. Now you may ask yourself, what exactly is happening with fishing lines? Why are they such that whales are getting entangled year after year? Why are we living in this scenario where 15% of the entire population is getting entangled with fishing line every single year? To explain that, I will now show you a diagram that explains this whole phenomenon, what it looks like. So on your screen you will see this diagram. The diagram shows that on the surface of the ocean there is a buoy. And that buoy, as you might see on your screen right now, is attached to a lobster trap on the floor of the ocean. And there is a fishing line that connects the buoy to the trap that spans the entire water column. This clearly is an issue for the whales, because when a whale is swimming through the water, minding its own business and swimming with its mouth open to fish for plankton as whales do, it could suddenly find itself running into a fishing line. If this happens, a whale generally will thrash around, panic, and in a very short amount of time the whale will find itself entangled in the fishing gear. Now it's very tough for whales to get unentangled by themselves, and in fact it doesn't happen. Interventions are really required in this scenario, and whales can swim around for years with ropes stuck to them, with injuries from the ropes, with ropes in their mouth preventing them from feeding. There are many adverse effects as a result of these entanglements. You have whales struggling to feed, exhaustion, issues with reproduction, infection, go down the list. There's one bad thing after another. So, what could we do about this problem? Well, luckily there is technology currently being developed that will forego the entire system of lined fishing. And this system would be lineless fishing is what it is called. Essentially the way it works is a fisherman, or a lobsterman rather in this case, is in a boat, and in order to find where his traps are, he has GPS technology that leads him to the traps. Now, to get the traps to the surface of the water without having a line, there is an electronic signal that is sent down to the bottom of the ocean where the traps are, and those traps are also connected to an inflatable buoy, which upon the activation of the lobsterman is inflated and brought to the surface. At that point, the lobsterman can extract the lobster from the traps. Now, the current issue with technology here is that it is an extremely cumbersome process, very difficult, for the lobsterman to reactivate the buoy so that he could put the trap back in the water and send it back to the floor of the ocean. So researchers right now at MIT in particular are working on trying to find a way to make this technology more efficient. Because if we want to get the lobster industry on board with lineless fishing so as to better protect whales, we have got to do it in such a way that the actual process of fishing without lines is smooth, is simple, and not difficult for the lobstermen. And the technology needs to be perfect too. You can't really have any glitches with this if there's going to be some sort of government mandated program where all lobstermen are required to fish lineless. So this is a really important measure that we are lucky to see these developments going on right now, especially given the situation, which is that the North Atlantic right whale is the most endangered large whale in the world, and they have a population under 400. So really protecting each individual whale life is just very important here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jackson. Yeah, that's really interesting. The diagram doesn't really do it justice because it just showed three traps on the bottom. And it's important when the buoy floats up that the traps don't get dislodged from sticking to the bottom. Because the last thing you want on a rolling seas is your trap line drifting away somewhere. And the buoy is about the size of a volleyball, and you're trying to find that. Once they're hooked it on, then it's a shorter line to put over the winch and bring it in.
That's right.
And you're also saying that the ocean is a tough place to develop equipment. And this can't be some prototype that has been mandated. It has to be tried and true and standing up to all the elements that oceans can throw at it. The last thing the lobsterman needs to do is to have a possibility that he lose his rigs and stuff.
Absolutely.
As a sailor, I'm excited about this because it means that there'll be less lobster buoys, so I have to navigate the boat around. And as a motorboat operator, I imagine they'd even more appreciate that.
Right. And here's the thing, too. When you have all this untrackable gear floating around in the ocean, it's just worse for the whales because we don't know where the dangerous gear is, and whales could get entangled far out in the ocean without us even knowing. And that's an even worse problem. We want to be able to track where these entanglements happen.
That's right. And those kinds of fishing gear are usually nets and so forth.
Right.
But we don't want to have the risk of lobster traps going away, like you said.
Right. It's called ghost gear.
Oh, ghost gear. Yeah, we don't want them ghost fishing or something.
Exactly.
Jackson, thank you.
Thank you very much. I was Jackson Dempsey. Next person will be speaking with you about more interesting right whale facts.
Is Cara Wong. So, Cara, talk to us about pollution.
All right. So today I'll be talking about how pollution harms the right whales. So the North Atlantic right whale, their breeding and feeding grounds is in the Gulf of Maine, but pollution is a huge, huge problem in the Gulf of Maine. There are 2,024 active point sources of pollution in the Gulf of Maine. 378 are wastewater treatment plants, and 93 are power plants. Now, a point source of pollution comes from a single place, and you can see that here in this diagram. Factories, vessels, power plants, wastewater treatment plants, these are all different kinds of point sources of pollution where they're directly leaking from the source into our waterways, whereas a non-point source is a mixture of several different pollution coming from different places. So this is usually in the form of runoff, agricultural or urban, and you can see that on the right, it's coming from cities and farms, your small town communities, roads, etc. And it's all mixing together and leaking down into our waterways. So in the Gulf of Maine, there are 5 main concerns for pollution. The first is sewage, the next is nutrients, the third is herbicides and pesticides, the fourth is toxins and chemicals, and the fifth is plastics. So first, for sewage, it can be either a point or a non-point source of pollution. So it would be a point source if it was coming directly from the factories and the water treatment plants. And you can see that on the left side of the diagram below. If it was a non-point source, it'd be coming from urban stormwater runoff or varying sewage pipes that are mixing together all your home's sewage. And you can see that on the right down below where it's mixing all together. Now, sewage pollution is a huge problem because it can spread pathogens. And these pathogens are both dangerous to humans and marine life. They come in the form of bacteria, viruses, protozoa, and fungi, and these can all make you very, very sick. So just a little background for some terms I'm going to be using. Bioaccumulation is the buildup of absorbed chemicals in an organism over time. And you can see on top right there, there's one single organism, in this case a fish, where over time the chemicals it's absorbed, you see in red, increase as it grows and as it ages and consumes more and more food. But biomagnification occurs through the food chain. This is the increase of the concentration of absorbed chemicals in each organism as you move up the food chain. So the lowest concentration would be at the bottom of the food chain, where the plankton and krill have the least amount of absorbed chemicals, and as you move up, you can see that the whales have the most. And this is a huge problem for the whales because pollution affects them the most as they are the largest and they consume the most. So to explain the issue with nutrients. Now, you would think that nutrients are good for the whales, but on the other hand, they actually have a very harmful effect on the ecosystems there. Sometimes this will lead to disruptions in the food chain, as I explained previously with bioaccumulation and biomagnification. Over time, excess nutrients can lead to abnormally dense plant growth, and this can cause a whole number of factors that are harmful to the right whales. This one circumstance is where plant growth becomes so dense it blocks sunlight from passing into the water, and it leads to harmful algal blooms, dead zones, and fish kills, as less dissolved oxygen in the water results in animals suffocating. Now, it also results in the bioaccumulation of excessive nutrients, which in this case for the right whales leads to unnecessary nutrients and toxins biomagnifying in the whale as it goes up the food chain. So the concentration only increases as it reaches the whales. In this diagram here, you can see how this occurs. So the sunlight comes down and passes into the water. And as it passes into the water, it increases the amount of photosynthesis that occurs for the plants that are living in the water systems. And as a result, it increases the amount of algae that blooms there. And so as the algae blooms occur, less sunlight passes into the water, and this increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the water, because with the photosynthesis only occurring at the top and nothing really in the bottom, there is no oxygen to be made for the living organisms under there. So you can see that organic matter precipitation is occurring, and this is leading to organic decomposition, and this decomposition is what causes oxygen deprivation and also the creation of toxic substances, which then poison the fish. And alongside the oxygen deprivation, this means that the fish are now suffocating. And so this is a huge problem because you have a twofold occurrence going on here, where not only can the fish not breathe, but they're being weakened by these toxins to the point where both factors are contributing to the death of these fish, and among them the whales as well. So, to elaborate further on harmful algal blooms, the number of these are increasing, and this is linked to ocean acidification due to rising pollution. As agricultural and urban runoff occur, this will cause increased nutrients in the water, and as a result, this will present harmful algal blooms over just normal ones. And harmful algal blooms occur when certain species release toxins. And so in the Gulf of Maine, where the North Atlantic right whale is, every year they experience intense blooms of saxitoxins. And these saxitoxins lead to sublethal effects, compromised health, and increased mortality for these whales. Now, in the span of 1 week in 2017, there is a number of whales being affected by this, and at least 6 of them were found dead due to toxic algal blooms, due to these saxitoxins. And this is a huge problem if this is occurring every year. So our next category is herbicides and pesticides. And these can spread through either direct or indirect means. So a direct mean would just be spraying the pesticides directly on your plants and your insects that you don't want. But indirect applications also occur, and these include pesticide drift, runoff into water bodies, secondary poisoning, groundwater contamination, and consumption of plants and animals that were exposed to pesticides. And this has a twofold effect. First, it reduces the availability of plants and insects, which means there's less food at the bottom of the food chain for animals to consume. But on the flip side, it reduces the amount of plants that are available as habitat to shield prey from their predators. And so now these prey are more exposed and have been also harmed in this case. So therefore, this is disrupting the food chain. Now, aquatic plants provide up to 80% of the dissolved oxygen necessary for aquatic life. But spraying these herbicides to kill these plants leaves severely low oxygen levels that have been depleted so much, the aquatic animals begin to suffocate. And this is a major problem with pesticides and herbicides we don't think about, because as they run off into our waterways, they're releasing these chemicals that remove all of the oxygen, and these animals are suffocating. And this is almost invisible to the general public as we live on land. So next, for toxins and chemicals bioaccumulate through the food chain. There are three major chemicals that are affecting the right whales right now in the Gulf of Maine. The first is PCBs, the second is mercury, and the third are PFAs. So PCBs are man-made. They are used for coolants and lubricants in a variety of electrical equipment. They bioaccumulate through the food chain, and for right whales, they are stored in their blubber after they have consumed food. So as animals at the bottom of the food chain are absorbing these chemicals, they're being taken in by whales as they feed and then remain in their systems in their whale blubber. And that's a huge problem because it's not going anywhere. So this harms the immune system of whales. It increases the risk of cancer for them, and it also causes reproductive issues. And as Jackson said, there are less than 400 of them left. So if there are reproductive issues going on, we're severely harming the chance of coming back from this terrible, critically endangered level. Other animal species have enzymes that can break down dangerous chemicals. However, whales don't really have any. They have very few enzymes, and none of them are equipped to deal with large amounts of PCBs. Now, naturally in the environment, PCBs can be broken down by either sunlight or microorganisms such as bacteria, algae, or fungi. But when pollution causes events like algal blooms that prevent sunlight from reaching underwater, as shown previously in the diagram, it prevents PCBs from being broken down at all because that sunlight isn't reaching them as they're too far down in the water. So therefore, they're not going anywhere, and all of these factors are coming together to cause a number of issues with the whales. So next we have mercury. And when mercury enters the ocean, it's converted to a form of mercury called methylmercury. And this is highly toxic. It's easily absorbed by marine organisms. It bioaccumulates in the food chain and biomagnifies as large predators eat. And larger predators and marine mammals are significantly more vulnerable to high concentrations of mercury. In the right whales specifically, it leads to reproductive failure, behavioral changes, and death. So in this diagram on the right, you can see how mercury flows off the land, usually as runoff, from a variety of sources. Some are natural, such as volcanoes, and some are not. They're caused by man, like coal plants, mines, and even just driving on the highway from your tires. And as it flows off the land, it enters the ocean. And when it enters the ocean, it is converted into methylmercury. Now, first it's absorbed by krill and plankton and the organisms at the very, very bottom of the food chain. And then next, those organisms are consumed by smaller fish, such as salmon, pollock, and oysters. And then next, those fish are consumed by even larger fish, and those include trout and tuna. And finally, at the top, the largest fish are consuming those, and those include sharks, pike, albacore, and halibut. And as you can see underneath those fish, the EPA has an advisory for how much of those fish you should consume per period of time. So plankton, krill, your very, very small fish, you can eat unlimited amounts. It does not affect you that much. But as you move upwards, you can only, let's say the medium fish, you can only eat those a few times a week because the mercury concentration is a little too dangerous to have more often than that. But the largest fish, you can only have those a few times a month because if you have even, let's say you have it 10 times, you're going to get sick because there's too much mercury in those fish and it's dangerous for consumption. So next we have PFAs, and so these are used basically every day by everyone. They're in countless products such as cleaning products, toiletries and cosmetics, nonstick cookware, water-resistant fabrics, stain-resistant coatings, and millions of more items. They're called forever chemicals, and this is because they can persist and last for thousands and thousands of years, and every single American that has been tested has found PFAs in their bloodstream, which is a huge red flag. They are less studied than PCBs, but even so, they've been found to be equally, if not even more, harmful. And for the right whales themselves, they damage the immune systems and their livers. And you can see on the right that every single company, factory, plant, household, agricultural place, any place you can think of that is created by man is releasing PFAs into the water stream and into the groundwater. And this is, they're forever chemicals. They're not going anywhere at all. So we really need to be aware and mindful of what we're doing here. And so our final category is plastics. Now, right whales are one of the animals most affected by plastics. A right whale, a krill and plankton eating whale, they ingest up to 10 million pieces of microplastic per day. And this is 50 times more microplastic pieces than whales that eat fish, such as the humpback whales. And again, this is daily. They're consuming massive amounts of microplastic. And as a result, plastics can obstruct digestion, and this will lead to starvation. Now, my friend Jackson was talking about ghost gear, and so lost fishing gear that has been floating through our oceans, this will lead to entanglements. And the problem with these entanglements is not only just like the entanglement themselves, but the after effect. And these lead to slow deaths. These are suffocations, starvations, exhaustions till they can't go on anymore. And this is a huge problem because while we think of microplastic in the ocean every day, there is also more than that. So we need to be very aware of the pollution and the things we let stay lost in our oceans. So finally, just some conclusions. Pollutants bioaccumulate and biomagnify through the food chain. The right whales absorb a large amount of contaminants because of their diet, which includes crustaceans at the bottom that are full of pollutants. And as they eat and eat and eat, they are consuming even more of them. As a result, these large mammals are so vulnerable to high concentrations of pollutants. So the only way we can aid the right whale is by preventing pollution. And that is all I have.
Yeah, that's what we got to do.
Don't want to hurt the whales anymore.
No, I like what you're saying about the way it bioaccumulates means it's an older fish. So they'll have more, and then biomagnification means up through the food levels.
Exactly.
So the graph there said, I can eat oysters and sardines and herring as much as I want. Let me bring me into this. But the canned tuna, like I love a tuna melt,
Yes.
and I can only have that a few times a week. And then the bluefin tuna and the swordfish are 7 trophic levels up, and they live a long time. So I'm not going to eat those, but you're saying maybe once a month or something.
Every once in a while, perhaps.
Yeah.
But the older, again, exactly as you're saying, not only is it the size, but the age as well. The more they're consuming over a long period of time, the more pollutants that are going to be in their system as well.
And I like the other graph you had, the other diagram of the orca swimming at the bottom with something above it and stuff, because it showed
Yes.
the pollutants inside the animal.
Yes.
And so each trophic level is like 10 times. So that diagram would show like 10 little things well, 1 in each phytoplankton and then 10 in the zooplankton. And so it's so that magnification at
Exactly.
10 times. So a 7th trophic level up and long lived, you're talking, 10 million times 10 to the, 7 zeros of the amount of pollutants, of forever chemicals that are in the lowest level.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And some of them are forever, and some of them, they aren't forever, but they're just as harmful. So,
Yeah, well, they just last a long time.
Yeah.
And that's like mercury is basically forever.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Lindsey Parziale from the University of Vermont is going to talk about whale habitat.
Sure am. Yeah, so as Rob just said, I'll be talking about the whale's habitat and some major threats that are
So look the camera
within
on.
their habitat. Well,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we need the map.
Oh, okay. We'll give you a map.
Well, we need a map.
I know. You
You
gotta
know I
have a
love my
map.
maps, Rob.
You do.
Right, so here we
map
have
person here.
here we have the right whale's habitat. So this dark blue all along the eastern coast of the US is the entirety of the right whale's habitat. And as you can see, these colors kind of get greener and lighter, and then ultimately they get to this reddish color. So basically this map is depicting the density of the right whale, and up right here we can see Boston and the Cape. So it's pretty clear that the right whales really love this spot up here. And they do spend some time down here, like Meriam was talking about earlier. This is where they have their calves, down here near Florida and Georgia. So if I go to the next here, so this is just a zoom in here of the topography that we see in the Gulf of Maine. And then again on the right here is Boston right here, and this is the density of the right whale in the Gulf of Maine. So the redder we get, the more right whales there are. So we can see they are very dense around Cape Cod. And to get into some major threats, one big issue is heat in the Gulf of Maine. So this Gulf of Maine is heating 99% faster than any other body of water. And we can see in this graph on the right that temperatures in the surface water have even gotten to either equal to or more than 5 degrees Celsius above the average temperature that it has been in the past. So this is a massive problem. Once again, we have Boston right here. And as we just discussed, this is the whale's primary habitat for feeding. So they spend a lot of their time up here. And the fact that this body of water is one of the fastest warming regions is very concerning. And going into some of the reasoning of why this is happening, here on the left we have a map of the currents, and then on the right here is a graph. We're going to focus on this one up here, especially this orange rusty color. We can see an intense incline in the surface temperature, and we're looking at the orange specifically because it's 0 to 50 meters, so that's the surface water. And as Meriam told us earlier, the right whales mainly spend their time in the surface water. And bringing it back to the currents over here, we have all of this. We've had a massive increase in rainfall, and this big increase in rainfall is bringing all of this rain through all of these major urban areas we have along the coast of Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine. And all of these surfaces have been, all of these land surfaces have been heating up intensely and then heating up that said rainwater and dumping into the Gulf of Maine. And now we do have some currents that are a bit colder coming down from the north, but since cold water is denser than hot water, it simply just falls deeper than the surface water.
And the rainwater is fresh, and so that's
Yep.
going to tongue out onto the surface.
Yeah, it's warm, it's spreading, and the right whales mainly stay in this surface water, so it's a big issue for them.
Uh-oh.
I know, big ruh-roh. So now to get into more major threats, the Gulf of Maine is a very busy area, and one reason that it's busy is all of this different human activity we have going on here. So like Meriam talked about earlier, we have shipping is a big problem. So these red lines here are all of the different shipping lanes that we have going on. There's also a lot of fishing that goes on in the Gulf, and Jackson told us the issues with that earlier. And what we're also seeing is a lot of offshore wind in the Gulf. Now, offshore wind isn't inherently a problem, but it's the increased human activity we're seeing that is a problem. So this brown down here is some sold wind leases that are already being built, and then these green ones right here are ones that actually just went up for sale on June 18th. And then you can see on the right that there was an effort to avoid the major dense areas for the right whale. So once again, we see these red areas, these deep red areas are really dense with right whale activity, and these black spaces are the new offshore wind leases. So realistically, it's just making this Gulf busier than it already is, which is a problem for the whales. And next up, for why it's a busy area, we have aquaculture. So all of these green dots we're seeing on the left here, these are all aquaculture sites. And right here is Cape Ann, so that's the top of Massachusetts, and then we get up into the coast off of Maine right here. And the main issue with aquaculture is these pens that sit in the water, and these are mainly for salmon aquaculture. And now the salmon aquaculture is a big issue because these farmed salmon, they develop these little lice here, these little brown, they're these small crustaceans that develop on farmed salmon, and this is a big problem because on the right here we can see these are the copepods, which are these little zooplankton that are the primary food source of the right whale. And when these farmed salmon develop these lice, the farmers have to do something about it. So what they end up doing is dumping these chemicals, these harmful lysicide, into these pens that then they kill the lice. But then since the copepods are similar to the lice, they're both these small crustaceans, the copepods also get killed by the lysicide. And then the right whales run out of food, and it's a massive problem. So we've got the fact that the water's heating up and it's a really busy area, and there's lots of lysicide that's killing off their food source. So if you want to know something you can do to help us out, to help out the right whales, you can stay informed here. So you can join us in calling for a right whale national marine sanctuary. And Rob, do you want to tell them a little more?
Well, yeah. So there's the website, www.rightwhalesanctuary.org. And that, you can go there and you can sign up with your email address, so you'll be then informed about what we're doing and the different campaign, how the campaign is developing. And you'll be able to download some of the offtakes of this production today. And more maps by Lindsey here, and then the map there is my attempt to draw something around all those red spots. So and there's a little notch in the upper right corner, and that's right up against Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. So that's already protected, or that's already managed collaboratively, which is what a sanctuary would do. And then we don't know how far along between the Stellwagen and Boston it should be. So we need your input, listeners, about, especially if you're on the North Shore. Do you want the North Shore waters to be considered part of this sanctuary? And then, of course, it's got Cape Cod Bay, and then the Southeast Channel going around the Cape. It doesn't go up onto George's Bank, so if you look carefully, you can see kind of the depth marks there. Because the whales tend to go up and down the channel, and not, well, I don't know, the red spots were up there on the banks too. And then we have the Nantucket Shoals, yeah, and then going west to Block Island. And so it deliberately includes where the windmills are going, because as Meriam's slides show, we've got a lot of boat traffic, a lot of things happening in the whales' feeding grounds. And so the purpose of a sanctuary is to bring all the stakeholders together so they know each other. They appoint representatives to sit on the advisory council, and so everyone gets to know each other's issues and interests, on their need to move around and know what's happening. And so that sets up communication channels. And so it's really important that the windmill builders let everyone else know every day about how they can maneuver their boats around those windmills and stuff. Yeah, so let's go to the full stage. And so let's hear about what other, so we've been campaigning, and when you go onto our website at www.rightwhalesanctuary.org, not only can you sign up, but you can also sign up for email. You can sign our petition or sign our letter to NOAA. NOAA will only act if enough people call for this. And we ask you to write a comment, because it's not the number of people, although it looks good to have someone from every state and have everyone from every coastal town. But it's also those comments are what really interests people. So I'd like to share with you some of the comments, and so invite Meriam and Cara and Jackson, come on up here, and we're going to go round robins with some of our favorite comments that have come in.
Yeah, so the way the comments are structured, it's basically we're asking the question, why do you think a right whale national marine sanctuary is important? And people have been replying, and we picked out some of our favorite ones. So I'll start with, because extinction is forever, please save these magnificent creatures, which was written by Brenda Haig from Long Beach, California.
Stephen Johnson from Portland, Oregon says, I want a productive lobster and fish industry while protecting whales. An agreement that is enforced is better for workers, consumers, and everyone who respects the environment.
They are being depleted and will go the way of the dodo if we don't protect them. Thank you, Debbie Woods of Rohnert Park, California.
So Marion Fitzgerald from Maryville, Tennessee has to say, once it was the right whale to hunt and kill, but today it is the right whale to protect.
Who's that?
Simply, there are not many left. And once they're gone, they're gone. I'm dreading reading the headlines. The majestic right whale is extinct. Yet it didn't have to be that way. Thank you, Russell Gay, Winchester, Massachusetts.
These animals could use a good lawyer. I'm not one of those, but a sanctuary would help. That was Len Messina in Middletown, Connecticut.
Christine Weathersby from Phoenix, Arizona says, planet before profits. We are guardians of this planet. It is our responsibility to protect and preserve as much as possible.
Alan Papscom of Stockbridge, Massachusetts says, right whales have the right to life. Notice that wordplay there.
Bambi McCluskey from Albion, Mississippi? Michigan. Bad with those. We should have a sanctuary because it is the right thing to do. Innocent living beings deserve protection and respect. Everyone and everything is connected. And then Luz Cobarrubia from San Francisco, California, says, as stewards of the planet and all its creatures, it is our responsibility and duty to ensure their protection for future generations. The importance of all animals to the balance of our delicate ecosystem cannot be underestimated. Please do what's right and create a right whale national marine sanctuary.
And then I think said as simply and strongly as possible, Earth is their only home too. And that was said by Virgin Linknew from Anacortes, Washington. Well
Thank
said.
you. Yes.
Well said,
Well
everyone
said.
who's
So if you'd like to
submitted
make a
comments.
comment, we're going to go back to, let's see the page here. So www.rightwhalesanctuary.org, and you can click on the comment button and make a comment. I can't see what that is. So that's what the sanctuary looks like. You guys aren't off the hook. You got to come back here. You're the best part of this. I just got to find camera 2 again.
I think it's all set.
Yeah,
There we
we're
go.
on it.
Oh,
Looks
we're on
good.
it? Oh,
Yeah,
good.
looks good.
So we didn't lose Jackson yet, so that's good. So we're at the Ocean River Institute over in Harvard Square, and maybe next Wednesday, but for most Wednesdays until the middle of August, we're going to set up a table in Harvard Square by the kiosk and invite you to come on down and say hi to us and tell you what we think about why we should have a right whale. Why? Would you close this out? I'm stumbling over my words here.
Yeah, feel free to come visit us while we're tabling in Harvard Square on Wednesdays. What time did we just...
1 to 3.
1 to 3. So please come by, say hi, tell us why you think a national right whale marine sanctuary is a great idea. And we can give you plenty more information, tell you where to go, how to support, how to submit a comment, anything really. So
Cool maps
Yeah,
like that?
yeah, plenty of cool maps. I have ensured we have lots of fun maps to look at. Cara's got some diagrams too. It'll be some great fun. You can get some stickers.
Yeah, we got stickers.
It's awesome. You could hold the right whale we have up here too, so you can see what they're like.
Well, let's hand it to Cara to say something about what your... well, help us close this out. Well, what might they see at the table and stuff?
Oh yeah, so at the table you'll see a couple flyers that tells you about the right whales, why we should protect them. You'll see, again, our clipboard where you can sign up, leave some comments if you'd like, join our newsletter even.
You got one of your diagrams from the talk, or
I do, yep, I do have the diagrams
so we
from
can
the
see
talk.
biomagnification?
Yes.
And
As Lindsay said, I have the diagrams. I have them printed out and ready for
Yeah.
y'all to take a look at.
Map girl, diagram girl.
Yeah, we got those down.
We got them.
and Miriam.
Yes.
Miriam can show you pictures of the injured whales.
Let Miriam speak. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I mean, if we have pictures of injured whales, you guys can see how.
No, we don't want to look at injured whales. I didn't let you put those up, I think.
It's more just about, getting
But talking
involved
about-
and, connecting with us, kind of just getting involved in whatever way you guys can. We really appreciate being able to talk to you and, find out what you guys think, and that really helps us out, and then in turn, we can help the whales out best we can, so.
And if you're really good, Miriam might let you see that red dot of a whale going up around all the speeding
Sure.
ships and stuff. I mean, that was right out there, out of Harry Potter's Marauders map or something. So they have actually done that. They have set up buoys that listen all along the way into Boston Harbor. And the sounds are sent to Cornell, the ornithology lab, where their computers said, "Yup, that's a right whale," and then it tells the maps that there's a right whale right by which buoys the right whales are by, and that's when the boats have to go 10 miles an hour by those buoys. Mm-hmm. So it's a really dynamic. It's really cool what the technology that we have today is. Jackson, you want to add something?
Please support us. Join the effort.
Yes.
Get NOAA to implement this policy.
It starts local, so any help you can give, it's really important.
Yeah, you don't have to come by to get your stickers or to participate. You can just sign up online. You can drop us an email, rob@oceanriver.org or info@oceanriver.org, and we'll send you those stickers if you'd like.
If you're really lucky, if you donate, you might get a cool bandana. You never know.
Oh, we got cool bandanas, but we'll have to look for. You have to subscribe to our e-alert, and you'll see what the band. Oh, we'll have them at the table too, but those are like a $35 donation.
Can we explain the e-alerts to the audience? The e-alerts.
E-alerts is our newsletter, and we just sent one out. And if you subscribe, you'll get one of those. You'll be on our mailing list. So that's where we're talking about opportunities to make a difference. And so there are other issues. If you go to our homepage, you'll see 6 different campaigns to choose from. And when one of those is developing, we'll put it out in the e-alert saying, last chance to sign up to slow the water down from coming off the landscape, or let forests grow instead of being cut for timber. It's different campaigns. So that's another reason for signing up. Thank you, Jackson. Yeah.
Of course.
So we've managed to spend another 57 minutes with you. Thank you. And thank you, Lindsey, and thank you, Jackson. Thank you, Cara. Thank you, Meriam. For all of you who have been listening, thank you for tuning in, and please take some time to take care of yourself and to take some care of this planet of ours. I couldn't do it without a team here, so